Ladies and gentlemen, viewing public in Oregon and Southwest Washington and beyond, welcome.
This is very formal.
Welcome to this presentation of Rod Hill's 2022-2023 Winter Outlook. Allow me to introduce the star of this discussion. He is Rodney Hill.
We've done this type of thing in the past, live on Facebook, and this year we're focusing on the majority of our digital platforms, and this is going to go in our new Streaming Plus app, and we hope you'll find this discussion of my research of what to expect this winter to be interesting.
I like to give you a hard time about a lot of things, but I know that you take this seriously, and so do a lot of our viewers. In fact, in my own household, this is true, my kids, who are now 15 years old, they start asking me around the first week of school, when is Rod putting out his winter outlook? When is Rod doing his winter outlook? Has Rod talked to you yet about his winter outlook? And yesterday, when it came out, I sent them links to their phones, and one of them wrote back and said, he's wrong. I go, why do you say that? He goes, there's going to be more snow. They always want to hear about a lot of snow.
Kids want, a lot of us want snow. A lot of adults too.
We'll dive into what you have come up with for this year's winter outlook in a minute, but I thought we should start with a question that one of our viewers actually asked. It's kind of a three-part question. You ready? Try to remember all three of these questions.
All right.
How many years have you been doing this? How many years has your outlook been accurate? And how do you determine the accuracy of the outlook?
So the answer is, I started this back around 2000, one of the first years that I started forecasting here in the Northwest. And I started it because, when you get an outlook for a season, whether it be winter or summer, it's mostly, NOAA or the National Weather Service says you're going to be above normal or below normal or normal. And I was always like, that's it? There's got to be more information that we can try to find to give people some answers to what's going on. So, for example, we're going to show some graphics on the monitor here. So, last winter, to me, from my chair, these were the headlines of what actually happened. We had that record late April snow. That was historic. We had 2 inches of snow. It was around the 11th and the 12th of April. We had never had so much snow. It was just 2 inches, but so much so late in the season. That was historic. Total snow for the season was about 6 inches. Total precipitation was pretty much normal, technically just shy of an inch above normal. These were for the months of the main winter months, November into March, but I did include that April historic snow. And the temperatures turned out to be about normal. So are you ready for my report card, Mr. Carter?
Can I just go back for a second?
Yeah.
I don't remember there being a snowfall in April.
Some other people mentioned that too. It was it was either the 11th and 12th or the 12th or the 13th.
Okay.
It was officially 1.9 inches of snow. You probably don't remember it because it came and it melted quickly and it was gone.
Right.
But from a weather perspective, it was historic. We had never had measurable snowfall so late in the season, getting into mid-April.
I believe you. I just don't remember it.
We also had it snowed basically the last 5 or 6 days of December last year. And then we had a little bit of snow in February. It all added up to be about 6 inches.
I remember the late December snowfall because it happened between Christmas and New Year's. A lot of people were off from school and work, and so it didn't really impact a lot of people, but I do remember that.
Yeah, and it wasn't a big storm. These were days that it snowed an inch or two here over a period of about 5 days, and some of it melted. So, I went back to my notes of what I said would happen last winter, and based on that, I put together this report card coming up. So, I did a lot of research, and I remember this when I talked to you a year ago. I said it's a back-to-back La Nina. And this was crazy. My research showed almost 90% of the time, almost always, the second year of a back-to-back La Nina was drier than the first year. So I went with that. Again, this is the world of statistics. Something has to make up that 10%, right? Well, that happened last year. We were not drier, we were wetter. I mean, not a big difference. 2 years ago, it was 22.68 inches total for the winter months. Last winter, we had 24.36, but that was wrong. But that was a big point of mine. I made a big deal about telling you it was going to be a cold January, compared it to a January that was about 6 to 7 degrees below normal for much of the month, kind of a historically cold January. That did not happen. At the time, all of the outlook models I looked at were really hitting on a dry, cold January. January turned out to be basically normal, both temperature and precipitation. So those are my two bad marks. But what was good last winter? Talked about colder than normal overall. And in fact, December, January, February all came in at about 1 degree below normal. So that was good, right? We talked about valley snow being at least 4 to 6 inches. Didn't think we had, I thought the chances were less than 50-50 that we would have a big storm. We did say that the snow chances of getting a little bit here, a little bit there were kind of even, Stephen. That turned out to be a perfect forecast. 4 to 6, we had 6.3. That was perfect. Mount Hood forecast 80% of normal, more than 400 inches of meadows projected. The actual snowpack was higher than that at 95%. but it was still kind of ballpark. It was a good season. I gave myself a check mark for that. So, again, it's a seasonal outlook. You're going to give yourself some latitude. The best mark overall here was clearly this one. Because even if you're giving that a 24-hour projection, that was right on the money. 4 to 6, and we had 6.3.
Right. No, I do like the self-evaluation. I'm curious if you ever went back over this and said, "My gosh, this was a terrible year." Would you just like crumple it up and throw it away? I'm like, we don't have to really talk about this. I mean, have you ever had a year where you go, "Ooh, that was a little bit off the mark"?
No, you know, the reality is most years, like most daily forecast, think about a daily forecast. We're trying to tell you, are the winds going to be noticeable that day? What's the low going to be? What's the high going to be? I give myself credit if I hit the high or low within 4 degrees of each one. Did we get the timing of the precipitation when it was coming in somewhat correct, morning or afternoon? How much was it going to be?
Right.
So every forecast really has 3, 4, 5, 6 points to it on a daily basis. Seasonal forecast is the same way. So I try to be fair in figuring out what are the bullet points I'm really going to grade myself on. And if you do all of that, and I log this, because I want to know if I'm wasting my time, my accuracy rating, it used to be higher. I've had a couple rough winters.
Right.
It's down to about 66.5%. But here's the deal with seasonal forecasting, anything above 60%, which is 10% better than flipping a coin, anything above 60% is actually considered pretty good skill. And I'm coming in at about 66.5%. Over 20 years.
Do you think you could do anything to help improve accuracy? Could you do like brain teasers or brain exercises?
Sleep is always good.
Right?
It's difficult because you also, you know, part of what I want to do is pinpoint things as much as I can,
right.
And that puts you at risk for being wrong.
Serious question now, and I like that you put together all these graphics. I'm going to have some fun with one of your slides here. Back-to-back La Niñas. So we've had 2 in a row. You are saying that we're going to have a 3rd La Niña winter this year. I've been here for 22 years, and if someone says, "Hey, what does a La Niña winter mean?" I go, "I think it means it's going to be wetter." And,
there you go. Yeah.
But I have no real. Beyond that, I don't know what I'm talking about.
There's a stereotype that I think, and to your point, maybe you don't know. I think there's a significant, I'll say a decent number of people that have memorized a stereotype of El Nino means warmer than normal. And often the rain in El Niños goes into California and kind of leaves us alone a little bit. La Niñas mean kind of cool, wet, and active. I think those are the 2 stereotypes. And then what's neutral is not known as well, but that is the wild card. That's the one that often produces our biggest storms.
Okay.
So those are the stereotypes. But it's unusual. I think I found this is only the 3rd time. If you go back, they started keeping these records, what we call the INSO cycle, which is La Nina, El Nino, or neutral. And we're basically El Nino's warmer equatorial Pacific waters than normal. La Nina's cooler. Neutral's right in the middle, pretty close to average. They started tracking this stuff back in 1950. If you go back to 1950, this is only the 3rd time we've had 3 La Ninas in a row. So that in itself is unusual. Is there any significance that we can take from that? See, last year, remember I said, "Oh my gosh, I found the 2nd La Nina is almost drier 90% of the time." But last winter was the winter it made up the 10%. So I've kind of backed off on the significance based on failing last year of the significance of what 3 in a row means. But La Nina basically does mean this. The main jet stream quadrant entrance into the U.S. is right here in Oregon and Washington. More than not, the jet stream enters in the Pacific Northwest. So we get a higher number of storm fronts coming in. That gives us our active, rainy, wet patterns, more than not. Cold air often kind of holds up north of our area and then spills down into Montana, the upper Midwest, and the Dakotas. Now, what happened 2 La Niñas ago in that February of 2021, which we're going to talk about some more coming up, but we got east winds off of this cold air pooling that was off across the upper Midwest and the upper Rockies, and that fed a storm to us. So there is cold air expected to be somewhere close by that we'll have to keep an eye on this winter.
There have been winters where we've seen early snow, and I would consider around here early snow to be December snow, talking Valley floor at this point.
Yeah.
And I remember the one year, I think it was 2016, I may be off by a year, but one year around 2016, my kids had 4 snow days at school before Christmas even arrived.
And they were thrilled.
They were thrilled. There was a lot of snow on the ground. What sort of pattern, is it a La Nina, an El Nino, something neutral that would produce significant valley snow in December?
Okay, I think we have that. So I'm just kind of clicking around here a little bit to find the graphics that I can find. Hold on, Brian.
Oh, we're not going anywhere, Rob.
Hold on.
We will
All
hang
right.
with you as long as necessary.
Okay. So what do you need to get snow? You need cold weather, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you need cold weather. So let's start there. So Arctic air invasions. We've had 14 events since 2000. 8 of those were La Nina, 4 were neutral, 2 were El Nino. So La Nina years favor the most these cold Arctic air. I just talked about the cold air coming down over the upper Rockies, and sometime we can feed off of that. So does that translate into snow? You would think, got to, right?
Right.
This surprised me. When I found this research, this surprised me. So 8-inch snowstorms since 1980, this is what I found. Only 11 events in the last 41 years. That's not many.
No.
11 snows of 8 inches or more. 6 of them were neutral, 4 of them were El Nino. Only 1 was La Nina, and it was that storm of 2 Februaries ago in 2021. That shocked the heck out of me. So if you go back to 1980, the answer in the research is if you want a big snowstorm, La Nina is the least favorable pattern, which I think goes against the stereotype that a lot of us have in our mind.
Yeah, I'll always remember
what
you
La
saying
Nina
that
would
now.
be. So La Ninas do, though, overwhelmingly typically give you at least some snow. And by some, I mean we got a little 1 to 3 inch event here. We got maybe a 2-inch event here. So you go, some snow is likely. Maybe it's like last year where we had several events total up to 6, but at least some snow is likely. This year, I don't think it's likely we get any snow in Portland before January 1st. I don't really think it's likely we're going to get a big event. But if we do, I think the odds favor it being most likely mid-February into March.
See, these are my least favorite type of snowfalls or snow events. These are, because it's like, do we make a big deal about this? Can I stop going to work? And do the kids have to go to school? It's like too close to being nothing. I kind of tend to root for those big ones, the 6-inch and plus.
Yeah, these are more of a nuisance. I do want to talk, I'm going to lead the conversation for a second. And Director Brian, if you can show, I'll know which video we have when you put it up first. We have some snow video and ice video. This looks like the snow. This was that storm February of 2021. And what was crazy about this, and by the way, the National Weather Service led the way on this, and their forecast was spot on. This was a storm that produced up to 15 inches of snow in Clark County. There's Vancouver. We had 10 inches of snow at PDX in North Portland. But by the time you got down into Westland, Oregon City, and south to Salem, it was all ice. And it was crippling ice by about 2 inches accumulation. We had people on power generators for a good 2 weeks plus in some of the areas, particularly in Clackamas County. And my point is here, that was a reminder that one big winter storm is often not the same weather across our entire region. And basically in Channel 8 television, we have a responsibility to forecast the weather. If you're talking about the I-5 corridor from about Albany northward up into Longview, that's basically our viewing area.
Sure.
So that was a storm where everybody got something, but there's a big difference in getting all ice or all snow. And other times, you know, there was a winter, a couple winters back where Washington County viewers were angry. And I remember, you had a reason to be, because you kept turning on the TV and we kept saying snow, and Washington County basically never got any snow, at least much of that winter, while East Multnomah County had several like 6, 7, 8-inch events. So often, you know, the storm we say coming in happened, but only happened for a fraction of the area between, say, Albany and Portland or north to Longview. We don't, just off my cuff, this just my memory talking. I can say about once a decade, we have a classic Pacific front that comes in and is such that from Albany to Longview, everybody gets a foot of snow. It just doesn't happen very often. It's usually some sort of variance.
I remember that's the ice and snow event where I lived down near Oregon City and Westland where we were covered in ice. I had to come up here to work north of our downtown studios here, full of snow. I had to drive a few people home. I couldn't believe how much snow was in North Portland, like in the city during that event. But I always feel for you because at the end of the day, you know, people look at that 7-day or that day outlook and you have a number attached to it. And it either says, and then you put like a couple of numbers attached to that for snow amounts. And so inevitably someone goes, that's not what I got. Are there areas that we can expect, if you are going to have a snow event in the I-5 corridor area? Typically, am I right in saying that areas north, like Clark County, will probably see a little bit more snow? Areas south, in terms of Salem or lower than that even, are going to see less snow, or you can't even say that. You can't generalize.
I wouldn't say it that way. I would say if you do want to generalize, you would say East Multnomah County, where they're impacted the most by cold east winds coming out of the gorge, have more winter events, be it ice or snow or both, than the rest of our valley area in general, just because that gorge element gives them the heightened chance. But, you know, I remember a year where Portland had a couple inches and Corvallis got hammered of like 16 inches of snow.
Right.
And down to Eugene when we had nothing up in Longview.
Yep.
So it really is just kind of a checkerboard of variances when you get away from the gorge, which always, I shouldn't say always, but often has a heightened chance. Yeah.
How about another generality? Are we seeing warmer winters overall? I would assume so. We've done so many stories about climate change and global warming. We've talked about, I know we've talked about summer temperatures being above what we saw 15, 20 years ago. What about winter temperatures?
So let me start. I've got a graphic on this. I'm sorry, I'm just kind of clicking around until I can get what I loaded up to. Let's see here.
Always want to show that good report card. I see that.
Oh boy, did I miss it? Did I not load that?
What do you need to do to load that? Because I've got a song and dance I can perform for 2 minutes.
Let me say this real quick. The answer is yes. Winters are warming too. There's concern about snow levels getting higher. Where Ski Bowl, for example, would start seeing far less snow and more rain, so their season gets shortened, right? We are seeing climate numbers that are suggesting that consistently, year to year, we're seeing fewer freezing numbers overall in the city of Portland at night. The mean temperatures of November and December and January and February, if you go back the last 30 years, they're all up by anywhere from 1 degree to 2 degrees. And because of that, because of a changing climate, I always started my winter research and did averages going all the way back to 1950 when I was looking for patterns, okay? This is the first time I've done a winter outlook that I never went back beyond 1980.
Okay.
And in fact, most of the data sets I tried to find patterns in, I just went back to 2000. And the reason is what you're saying. I'm saying our climate is totally different than it was in 1950.
Yeah.
And for the most part, it's different than 1980. So let's see if I can have better luck of being accurate if I just go back the last couple of decades, basically to the year 2000.
Yeah, why refer to a 1965 forecast that doesn't seem to apply anymore?
Yeah,
that's the bottom line.
Because things are changing. Absolutely.
So can we talk about the process since you brought it up and how you handled this year's winter outlook looking back to as far back as 1980?
Yeah.
I can tell you're looking for something.
Well, I'm going to go reset this real quick. So I'm walking over to our graphics computer and we're going to bring some things up. I do want to point out, Drew, that we have the kind of the long published newspaper type version, if you will,
yes,
on kgw.com for you to read through and see a lot of the graphics that we're showing you. We have the video on our KGW YouTube channel that we put on Sunrise yesterday morning. Of course, this is going to be living on some of our digital platforms as well. But I always start the process with, I'm going to leave Drew behind just for a second. I always start the process with what is NOAA and the National Weather Service projecting? Are they projecting an El Nino, a La Nina, or neutral? And what is the confidence level of that? So that's what I start with, and then I run with it. So this year, the base start was the fact that we're in a La Nina. And the National Weather Service and NOAA, so here we are, this is the normal equatorial water temperatures. We're below normal, so that's La Nina. Here's all the different models saying, yeah, La Nina, December, January. But then you get into spring, March, April, May. Now it's starting to end. La Nina finally ending. We've had it for 3 years, and we could actually transition into a weak El Nino at some point this spring. So I took into an impact, La Nina, I took into an impact of, well, if we're getting out of La Nina, let's say mid-February, it's weakening, does that impact? And I find data sets that would impact that. And then you come up to the La Nina climate itself. Strong La Ninas are usually about 2.5 inches for Portland specific above normal winter precip. Moderate La Ninas are actually wetter, over 3.5 inches. Weak La Ninas can actually be surprisingly dry. So I look at all that. Again, this La Nina this year starts off moderate and then it weakens. I look at what our friends at NOAA and the Weather Service are going. They're going above normal precip November, December, January. They don't have much confidence in temperature for the next 3 months. And then I start, pinpointing it down. So I came up with the fact that November and December are going to be pretty rainy patterns. Certainly, Drew, November's off to a wet start, but it's been chilly. There are signs that will warm up mid-month. And then I came up that January's a little bit quieter, drier, and the best chance of Arctic weather in February, and then March is cool and wet. So I am trying to pinpoint things down to a monthly data set. And then we talked about the Arctic air, because what do you want to know? You want to know, are we going to have an Arctic blast? So I look at that. We talked about that earlier in the show. And how do that correlates? We talked about the fact that La Ninas basically have the less chance of snow in terms of big storms. So I keep looking for data sets that can give me an answer of what people are interested in. Cold and snow, number one, number two, right, for the winter seasons. And then, of course, you're looking at seasonal averages too, and then you just start winding it down to what you can come up with, if that makes sense.
You know, this streaming platform, or this presentation you're providing is going to live on our new streaming platform, 8 Plus, for some time. And someone may be watching this for the first time weeks after we're delivering this. We're just coming off the month of October, as we're recording this. And it's crazy to me how things quickly can recover, because we talked for 20 days in October about how dry it was.
The first 20 days, only a trace of rain.
This is the driest October. This is so dry. How are we going to recover from this? The last 10 days, we did have enough rain in the end to almost have a normal October as far as rainfall goes.
So Halloween, we had just over an inch of rain, and that put the monthly October total up over 3 inches. So we finished the month of October just shy of a quarter of an inch below normal. So years from now, you're going to look at it and go, that was a typical rainy October, but it was anything but typical. It did set the record, as did August and as did September, for the warmest mean temperature all time for the month. We finished the month almost 6 degrees above normal mean temperature, and that was the record. Things can change in a hurry,
I have 2 more questions for you. You can talk about more things if you like, but I was curious, have we ever been wrong in forecasting a La Nina winter or an El Nino winter, like we got through and go, wow, that wasn't a La Nina at all?
I would answer that, let me answer it this way. You start finding winter outlooks. You know, I can't remember exactly when the Farmer's Almanac comes out and they get published, but you start hearing a lot about winter outlooks all the way back in the month of August. I never released mine. At the earliest, I released in mid-October. I tried to get it done by the 1st of November, which is when we did this year. There's a reason for that, and the reason is because a lot of times those prognostications for whether it's going to be an El Nino or a La Nina that come out in August are not correct. And by October 1, those outlooks have changed. So I don't feel like there's much overall confidence in what those outlooks are for that cycle until we get to October 1. By then, it's usually pretty accurate, I'm going to say, what those cycles are.
Farmers have used the Farmer's Almanac for decades.
Yeah.
But you're suggesting that the farmers, locally at least, should probably be relying on your winter outlook instead.
Well, I think the Farmer's Almanac is a really fun publication. It has a lot of great trivia and stuff in it. And when I worked in Grand Rapids, Michigan years ago, we had some fun for a month in December. And we tracked our daily forecast as a TV station, and we tracked what the Farmer's Almanac had said. Because the Almanac gets down into weekly, they get really specific. And we found that there was just nonsense. They try to get, what's wrong with the Farmer's Almanac is they try to get too specific. I'm finding I really struggle to try to pinpoint months, and I may stop doing that. I haven't had much luck.
Okay.
But the Farmer's Almanac tries to get down and pinpoint days, so like 3 or 4 days and weeks, and you just can't do that. I mean, sure, you're going to go, Farmer's Almanac told me it would snow and be cold January 10th, and I got a foot of snow on the ground. Well, of course, if you say that your entire life, eventually January 10th is going to be snowy and cold.
I want to give you a little love, send a little praise your way, because this isn't something that you have to do. The bosses don't come and say, hey, Rod, hurry up with that winter outlook. This is something you created. This is sort of a passion of yours, and you're doing this outside the walls of the KGW studios. I mean, you're home, the way you described it to me in the past, sometimes you're home at that kitchen table with all that paperwork out, and your wife's going, when can we use this to eat on again?
The table has taken over for about a month. It's a lot of hours to go through all the data that I go through, and I find it's challenging. I find it to be interesting. I think climate in general is interesting. And now it's one of those things I did, and now people look for it, so I kind of have to keep doing it. I do want to close real quick, Jay, go back to the mantra over here, because a lot of you are snowers and boarders. La Nina years by far are the best snowpack years for Mount Hood, not even close. 104% of normal snowpack on average. Neutral years, 88. El Nino years are the worst by far, 76%. Those are very glaring statistics. This year, remember, it's a moderate La Nina that weakens. So based on the weakening, maybe, because we don't really stop measuring the snowpack until May 1st. So I'm going 85 to 100% of normal snowpack. That's over 400 inches at Timberline and Meadows. That's a good season. I do believe if you look at the December model outlooks right now in terms of flow pattern in the atmosphere, there's some concern that we could have more rainy days and snowy days of 4,000 feet. That's the base at Ski Bowl for December. But that's really the only negative that I'm hoping doesn't come true that I'm looking at. Overall, skiers and boarders, I think, will be happy as they have been the last 2 years. We've ended up with good, healthy snowpacks up on Mount Hood.
You feel good about that?
Yes.
Should we wrap it up?
Let's wrap it up.
He is Rod Hill. I'm Drew Carney. This is the KGW Weather Center, and this has been Rod